Hi, everybody. Welcome to NLL Talk. I'm Candid Stanisci. Joining us as usual is Gary Groob, and we have a very special guest in Brian Shanahan. You can watch us in all the different connections that we make. What's important today, Brian, what we need to know from you, it's I don't know if it's a secret or what, but how did you start playing lacrosse? We lost your mic again.
Can't hear you, no.
We could hear you a second ago. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
No, I can't hear you at all, Brent. Well, I can do what I did with Milligan. I can call him, and we can talk that way.
His mic was live. If you wanna do that, you can do that. I'll just do the regular spiel that we do. I didn't do it because my computer has decided it's going to give me a little bit of grief. So I'll do that. You call him. So you're watching NL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, hopefully, Brian Shanahan, our guest, a name synonymous with the game of lacrosse, is going to join us. We'll see if we can get him to hear him. And here goes Gary now doing it. You got it, Gary?
I'm going to put on my earpods right now just to make it easier.
You can hear him, Frank?
Yeah, I can hear him. He's coming through.
Okay. So he's just going to put his earpieces in and away we go.
There you go.
Okay, I think I'm good now.
There you go.
Yeah, we're fine. Good.
Okay. Perfect. So I was saying, if you didn't hear me, is tell us how you got started in the game of lacrosse. It's something we always are curious about.
Yeah, so I grew up in Mimico, which is a small community in Toronto, and it has a great history of lacrosse. The Mimico Lacrosse Association has been around since 1890. So my parents are from Ireland, so they had no history in the game. But I did see kids with lacrosse sticks all the time, and I didn't know anything about it till grade 6 when one of my classmates, I just started asking him about it. He said, "Come on out," he says, "I think you'd love it." And back then I used to love to run. So I went out, played a game, and was totally in love with it from that moment on, and I still am. So started when I was 12 years old in Mimico, Ontario, and it's been a passion ever since.
What was the most attractive part of being involved? Was it the physical nature? Was the newness of the game? Was it just because you've had friends that played?
No, it was similar to hockey. The way it's box lacrosse is played. You're trying to score in the net. So there's a lot. The objective of the game was very easy to understand. But I just like the fact that you're on your feet and you're running in the pocket and your stick, and you could practice whenever you wanted. You didn't need ice time to practice. You could just go shoot the ball against the wall. So I just love that, and that was an addictive quality to me to go to. A schoolyard wall and shoot the ball, or even back then the Mimico Arena had no roof on it; it was outdoors, so we called it the box. All you had to say to people was, "I'm going to the box," and they knew what you meant. And you would go there. If it was closed, you just climbed the fence and went in and just shot, practiced all day. So that was so fun.
Now tell us a little bit about the transition from being a player to management.
It's funny because I played my rookie year, my one and only year in the NLL. I was a 37-year-old rookie. So previous to '98, the NLL was an American league. They had very strict import rules. So Canadians were allowed to play, but there was a maximum number of Canadians per team. They made some exceptions on the border city. So it might have been 2 or 3 imports per team, and I think a few more in Buffalo or Detroit when they had a team, because the idea was they were supposed to fill with local talent. So I was not good enough to be one of those imports, but when it came to Canada in 1998 with the Ontario Raiders, they just scrapped all the import rules, and I made the Ontario Raiders and played for them. But then, that was near the end of my career, 37 years old. The next year, when they moved to Toronto to become the Toronto Rock, the head coach, Les Wakeland, says, how would you like to be chief staff? And I think he fully expected me to say that would be great. And I said, no, I'm not interested. I want to keep playing, which is not the answer he wanted at the time. So I actually became a practice player that year, and I could see the writing on the wall. So I was a coach, assistant coach, practice player, and TV broadcaster, because when I found out the games were going to be broadcast on, it was Rogers Sportsnet at the time was the station in Canada. I said, who's doing the games? I said, nope, nobody that we know of yet. So I volunteered to do it, and so I had many things going on. The one I was least interested in was coaching, because I knew how hard they worked. The coaches, they worked their butts off, and I wasn't interested. I still wanted to play, and the broadcasting was just a brand new thing to me that I found really exciting. I found the broadcasting was close to play, like the excitement before a game, a big game, was similar to the excitement of playing a big game. So, so I was more interested in that. Now, I coached my kids lacrosse, minor lacrosse, and then they'll go in some junior lacrosse, but I was never really interested in becoming a professional lacrosse coach and just working as hard as they do when I enjoy the broadcasting. The broadcasting is fun. I feel with broadcasting, it's just like you're watching a game with your buddies, having a couple beers, even though we're not having any beers when we're broadcasting. You just feel like you're watching a game you love, chatting with your buddies. And I think, and to me, that was easy and fun and a lot less work than a coach. I have all kinds of respect for the coaches, the managers, but even back in '98, I saw how hard Les Wakeling, Eddie Como, Derek Keenan, and Johnny Meridian, they were working all the time, whether it's reviewing film or whatever, come up with game plans. That was a tough job, and I still think it is.
Oh, boy. Well, I guess thank you for lifting that veil why Gary and I do this. I really appreciate your support. I mean, because this is easier. I couldn't argue with you at all. The nice thing about doing this and being a broadcaster, since you mentioned that, is that yes, we get to release our inner fan. Now it's hard because you don't want bias to come out, but the love of the game can't be withheld.
Yeah. And I think some of the best advice I got early on in my broadcasting career was it was a compliment and advice, and it was Gord Stella. He was a media guy in Toronto, and he said, I'd been on his radio show many times. He says, "What's good about you is you are just being yourself, and that comes through." And he says, don't put on any airs, just be yourself, and be natural. And I've always tried to live by that. Just be myself. Don't try to put anything on, and just because I enjoy it. Like it doesn't have to be fake. You guys know. You guys love what you're doing. Yeah. So just enjoy it. I enjoy talking about lacrosse. I enjoy watching lacrosse. So just be myself and enjoy it. Talk about what I like.
Okay, Gary, let's drill down on Brian Shanahan. I'm sorry, Brian. I apologize for the tough questions he's going to ask right now.
Well, I want to start with Mimico. And you're playing their junior A and moving along up in the program. Now, it's had its great times. It's had its dark times. And now probably over the last 20 years or so, we're back to really, really great times. And nothing like going there and having a back bacon sandwich and watching the Mountaineers play. Like that's a highlight of summer, is going out and catching games in that barn. Let's talk about while you were there with the Eclipse.
Yeah, we'll see. When I played my minor lacrosse in Mimico, definitely during one of the low points. And a part of it was, when I got into it, I quickly learned about the history of Mimico, and I loved hearing the stories about, the lineups on the rink to get into the Drummond Street Bowl for big games, and I knew they'd won Canadian championships, Minto Cups, Man Cups, and I remember thinking, like, why couldn't I have been born in that era? I would have loved to have been part of that era. And then what happened probably when I was about 12, 13 years old is they closed the rink for a year to put the roof on. And we had to play in a rink, up Central Arena, not too far away, but it was a drive away. You couldn't walk to the rink. And I think that really hurt Mimico Lacrosse for a few years because it was such a community thing. Kids would walk to the rink, and that was gone for a year, and it didn't come back strong. And then at one point, the junior A team folded, and that was before I got to junior A, and that's why I ended up going to Etobicoke. But the funny thing is, there was a few teams in Etobicoke. At one point, there was the Rexdale Warriors. I mean, at one point there was all kinds, but when I was growing up, there was the Rexdale Warriors, and there was the Southern Etobicoke Lacrosse Association, and then Mimico. And Mimico was definitely the weak sister of the three. There were other ones previous years, Alderwood, Westmall, but when I was there, it was mainly the three, and Mimico was definitely the weakest of the three, while the Rexdale Warriors and Seala were competing for provincial championships. Mimico was playing, C-level, D-level, just barely putting teams together. And the other teams decided to combine. They were always like second best, third best. And Rexdale and Seala said, if we combine, we can be the best in the province. And they were right. They were so strong. And they laughed at Mimico for not joining in with them because Mimico was the weakest. And in hindsight, I wouldn't say it was forethought on Mimico's part, maybe just stubbornness. But see what happened is, like, for a few years, that Eclipse organization competed for Ontario championships, but they lost the community feel. The guys, the families that lived in Lakeshore didn't want to drive up to Rexdale. The families that lived in Rexdale didn't want to drive down to Lakeshore. Mimico still had their little community of people playing, as small as it was. And eventually, Eclipse had some great years, but eventually they fell by the wayside where, Mimico got stronger. And I'd like to say Mimico started doing a lot of good things. We really promoted, and we're talking 30 years ago, like the house league. They bring back the house league. And there was a time in minor across Ontario when organizations just had rep teams. So how do you convince a family, try lacrosse, but if you play, you have to be traveling all over Ontario on a rep team, probably get beaten up a bit because we're not that good. And game times all over the map. So Mimico, we decided we got to start our house league again, and we took every negative thing out. We said it's just going to be every same time, same place, every week. It was April till school ends. So when families said we'd like to go to the cottage, well, go to the cottage. We'll be done by then. It was so cheap even back then. Like it was. I don't think I'd be exaggerating to say they paid the registration was less than $50. But anyhow, house league. We did everything to get people to come out to house league, and then these same families that were saying, I'm not sure we want to play. We'd rather do it. How come we don't have another rep team? Why do we only have one rep team for the station block? And it just grew from there. Of course, in '98 when the Rock came, it exploded. When '99 when the Rock came, minor lacrosse exploded. But Mimico's done a lot of great things since then as well. They have a huge executive, and they're all about promoting. And you're right, Gary. They are one of the strongest minor and junior organizations in Canada right now, and they're still doing a lot of things right. And now I feel this is what I dreamt of when I was 12 years old. Said I missed when it was so great in Mimico. Well, it is again. You go to just about any junior A game, and they're pretty packed. They have a great crowd, and they love the games. And it's not just families and friends. It is the people who've lived in Mimico for 60 years. They come out to the games. I run into guys that I remember from elementary school, and they're just lacrosse fans. They're in their 60s, and they say, come to every game. And I love that.
Yeah, it's an event. Everybody comes out. It's an absolute event for the area. Absolutely.
It's a community thing, and that's the theme that we hear all the time, whether you talk about Peterborough, whether you talk about BC, whether you talk about Toronto, Oakville, wherever you go, even in the NLL, when you talk about Buffalo, you talk about Rochester, the rink, the floor attracts and maintains the strength and the community of the sport. It's very tied to where they play. The community really rallies around each arena, and it's not something that. And you pointed out something that the sad thing about when a team, for some reason, is gone, it's hard to start it up again because it is a grassroots operation.
Yeah, no, definitely. And even, what I love about lacrosse lacrosse, and this is not just Mimico, but go to the junior A game. In between the periods, all the little kids coming on the floor, and I remember being 11, 12 years old, being one of those kids at the junior A games, and to me, the junior A's were the pros. Those were the guys I wanted to be one day, and now it's great to see, like, there's so many little kids at Mimico, and now they all have their T-shirts and all that, Mimico this, Mimico that, bleed blue, and they're all on the floor. You think this is good for the future of Mimico, that these kids love being here, and I'm sure every one of them imagines they're a junior A or NLL star when they run on the floor between periods.
It's nice that kids that play lacrosse want to use more than their thumbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's also refreshing to hear that Mimico is still engaged like that. We hear all about Peterborough, we hear about Orangeville all the time, and Mimico we don't hear as much, but it is equally as engaged as those other organizations, and maybe even more so with the house leagues and things like that. So,
sorry, Gary, they've made it free for, I think, kids under 7 all play for free with the sponsorship from I think it's Subak Law, one of the parents whose kid is now playing pro. But he still gives back, and the kids, all the kids under 7 are getting to try out the game for nothing, and they've been doing that for years. That group's starting to approach about 12 years old now. This whole group has sort of started since they started this free program. So I think that's great. It's all about building in the grassroots.
Absolutely. So we move on into your MSL career, and you were one of 8 players to win 5-man cups in a row. Let's talk about the teams. You started with Brampton. I put a Brampton jersey on for that. But you spent a couple of years with them, won 2-man cups, and then Six Nations started up and basically put together an all-star team, and you were there for 3 more there. Got inducted into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame with that 3-year span of that team. Pretty incredible stuff. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say that I played senior, started winning championships, but it was a long haul before then, before I got onto good teams. When I finished, Mimico and even Etobicoke had no senior, so it wasn't something that I even thought about. I didn't even really know what the Man Cup was back. To me, it was junior A was it, and I think it was after my maybe second year after finishing junior, they were putting a team in Mississauga, and I got a call from the manager, and I think he just got a list of names. Like, he was just going down, this guy played junior, this guy, and he was just calling everybody, and we put together a team in Mississauga that was terrible but fun. We went 0-24 the first season, but I loved it. I didn't like losing, but I played so much. I was like the go-to guy on the team, and I got noticed. I got called up. It was senior B,
right? But
I got called up to senior A that year. I got to play in the first round of the playoffs for Scarborough against the Peterborough team that won the Man Cup. So I'm whatever I was, 22 years old, being called up to Scarborough to go to Peterborough to play against John Grant Sr. and that gang of Hall of Famers that were winning the Man Cup in I believe it was 1984. And I loved it. And I even got noticed. I definitely got noticed because I did everything to help my team. I fought. I scored the odd goal, played defense. And anyhow, it went from there that this is a whole new thing for me, the senior lacrosse. I played Mississauga a few years, Terry Sanderson. I think it was a year after Terry and I got in a big fight. The next year, Terry says, why don't you come up to Orangeville and play for us? And I did, and I loved playing with Terry Sanderson and his brothers up north. And Orangeville, even then, great place to play. They treat you like family. I still feel like family, even though I only played 1 year in Orangeville. But anyhow, I played there, came down to Brampton, and actually folded for a year. I was part of the team that came back, and we were weak for a while, but we seemed to get a little better and better every year until the 1 year, I think it was 92, we added a couple guys you'll recognize, John Tavares,
John who?
Kilgore, and I think Rich Kilgore. And we already had Jimmy Veltman, Troy Cordingley. So we went from the team that worked hard but just wasn't quite as good as Peterborough or Brooklyn to the contender, and that was '92. We won the Mann Cup that year. We won it again the next year, and so I would also I mentioned that first senior team of mine went 0-24, and I think that second year in Brampton we went undefeated. So I don't think there's too many senior lacrosse players who played on a team that went winless and on a team that went undefeated.
In 2 years. In 2 years from
That's incredible.
Boy, you must have got whiplash with
lessons from both teams, like the positives from both teams. From going undefeated, everybody wants to go undefeated. Nobody wants to go winless, but there was a lot of positives for me on that team. But anyhow, after that second year in Brampton, our coach went to Six Nations, Les Wakeling. I get the two Les's mixed, Les Bartley, Les Wakeling. Went to Six Nations, and he took about 5 or 6 of us with him, and we went on to win 3 more Met Cups. But a lot of people think it was a cakewalk, but it wasn't. Like that first year in Six Nations, we were the second place team. We were good, but we weren't dominant. We were the second place team. I think both our series against Brampton and Brooklyn went 6 games, and in Brooklyn, I think it was the finals against Brooklyn. We were down 2 games to nothing, and in overtime in game 3. So I hate to think what would have happened if we lost that overtime game 3, going down 3-0. But we only went down 2-0. We clawed our way to that overtime win, and then we won that series, and then won the Mann Cup against New West. And I think after that point, after that third win in a row, I think we just expected to win the Mann Cup every year. And you are right. Like we did. When you have great teams, great players gravitate to those teams too. So it's a whole lot easier to recruit when people that are free agents are looking around saying, which team should I go to? Which team do I have the best shot at with the Mann Cup? So we did have a ton of great Hall of Famers on those teams.
Please repeat again. There was an advantage to being both 0-24 and going
24-0.
24-0. Please repeat the importance and the value of both situations.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody knows you love being undefeated, but the team that we lost every game, it was probably because me being like a new senior player with no resume, going to a team that was like desperate for players. I was like the leader on that team. I would play power play, short man, like double shit. Like it was just the fact that I was demanded to do so much, and I loved it, and I thrived in it, and there was great friendships on the team. But the funny thing is, the 24th game went to the double overtime, and it was would have been a great way to end the season. We were going to the playoffs, obviously, but I was up in Huntsville, and we lost in double overtime that game, and I thought that we had to win that. But maybe it sounds better to say we were 0-24 than we were 1-23. But yeah, like, and the other thing is with that team, 2 of my brothers played on the team. When a bunch of guys from Mimico played on the team, we wouldn't have been able to. We couldn't have gone to. If we went to Peterborough, not one of us would have made it. We probably wouldn't have made any major team back then. But we all got to play, and some of us got noticed. From what we did on those teams. And I will also say, a lot of coaches. I remember playing in Brooklyn when they were the dominant team. They went 4 years without losing a game in Ontario.
Wow.
Yeah. And Peter Vipond was the coach. And I've talked to him many times. I know him well since then. But he said he respected those of us because he knew we were weaker. They had 7 guys, healthy scratches every game that would have been the best players on our team. We'd have trouble. We'd be lucky to show up with 14 runners. They'd have 24, 7 of them sitting in the crowd that we would have killed to use. But what he said to me, and it holds true, he just said that he goes, I respected the hell out of you guys that showed up all the time and worked your asses off, even though you probably knew you're going to get your butts kicked, but you guys showed up and competed. To me, that stuff is important. As a coach, I love players that compete. Not just compete on winning teams, compete all the time.
May I please underline one word on all that we've talked about, whether you win or whether you lose, and why losing is not a bad thing, because I'll underline it with the word opportunity. And you gained an opportunity and used it well. So there's always that. Don't feel bad. I'm speaking to players out there. Don't feel bad if you're on a losing team. Take advantage of the opportunity to make yourself better and get an opportunity to play more. And we've talked about that. You've talked about it too. With the kids, it's great to be road teams to play, for elite teams. But being a community team affords more people an opportunity to play and to grow and to identify how much they love the game and how good they are.
You're right, and I also believe one of the things I loved about winning that First Man Cup in '92 with Brampton is I'd probably been with them for 4 years. I'd been through the bad years. Mm-hmm. So there was a real sense of satisfaction that, there might have been only 2 or 3 of us that were still there since, they put that team back in the league in, whatever it was, '88. But there's a sense of satisfaction that we stuck with it, And the other thing I'll say about my lacrosse career is I was never a superstar. Probably wouldn't even say I was a star, but I was the guy who always won the unsung hero award or the most determined, that kind of stuff. So I take a great pride in that, but I also think that's also a lesson for kids too. You don't have to be the flashy player to have a good career. Even when I played junior with the Etobicoke Eclipse, and we were maybe the second best team in Ontario for sure. Mm-hmm. Maybe second best in the country. But we had Adam Oates and we had a stacked team. If you asked anybody back then, if you went back in time and say which one of these guys you think is going to win 5-man cups, I guarantee everybody would pick 20 guys before they mention my name, because all the superstars on that team. But I loved lacrosse, and I didn't care what role my role was. I loved the game so much, and so I stuck with it. So there are, I'm sure there are kids or junior players and all that are not the superstars, but if you love the game, stick with it, and it's always a good thing to be picked as somebody point at you and say he's the hardest worker on the team. Like doesn't matter what your skill level, the hardest worker on a team is always a great compliment.
Yeah, those that can't play coach, those that can't coach broadcast. I'm kidding. Kinda.
Now you talked about doing everything on the floor. Now I know you don't like the word transition. Do you think that we pigeonhole people too soon into certain rules? Whereas when I talk to the legends about this, a lot of the time they talk about the years that they had to do both, and there was no such thing as somebody coming out the back door going to the front. They did them all.
Yeah, and they did, and I grew up that way. This is what I'll say about that. My coach, like Les Wakeman, is the guy who started it, and I'll tell you why he started the specialists. Mm-hmm. They had, Brooklyn was that team that went 4 years in Ontario without losing a game, and then they had Gary and Paul Gate. The only way you could stop those guys, and I wouldn't even say stop, minimize what they were doing, was you had to put your best defenders on them whenever they were on the floor. And we started it as an experiment. Like, I think the first time we played them, they probably scored about 10 points each. The next time we played them, coach says, I got an idea, and he was like, every time, and I was, I was like everybody was going both ways back then, but I was one of the key defenders, better defenders. Every time they're on the floor, Shanahan, and Pat Coyle was on our team too. I think it was Pat Coyle and I. We got on the floor every time they did, and it worked. We still didn't beat them, but we lost in overtime. This time, instead of losing 18-9, we lost 12-11. Instead of them getting 10 points each, they might have had 5 or 6 points each. But that evolved to the point that we started, okay, you guys play out of the back door, whatever they're on, and that evolved into the special. But not only that, then if I'm playing out of the back door, then maybe John Tavares can take a shift off or 2 off defense, and we can double shift them on offense.
Right, sure.
And I understand, I totally agree that players should not be pigeonholed as kids, and they don't allow it until midget lacrosse, which U16 lacrosse. Mm-hmm. So that's when you first started. And I hated it, and I corrected it when I was involved with Nemacolm Minor. If somebody came in and said, my kid's playing defense and they'll stand at the blue line. But no, that's hockey. That's not lacrosse, and everybody plays every way. You know, you go back and forth. But what I say to the people that hate it, the transition, or the way that we have specialists now, I said somebody just has to beat it, because it sort of started with Les Wakeling winning those Man Cups. When I played for the Ontario Raiders in my first year, or my only year in the NLL, Les Bartley said to me before the season, he goes, "We don't play that way, and we never will." And halfway through the season, he says, "I changed my mind. You're playing defense. Pat Coyle, Terry Bowen, you guys got to play defense." And so a lot of coaches, Terry Sanderson, I remember him saying to me, "It was not bullshit lacrosse, not doing." He did it. Like, a lot of people that were against it did it because it works. And if you don't like it, beat it. Like, beat it with something else. Because that's the way lacrosse goes. Everybody emulates what's successful, and until somebody changes it. But what I will say is, I still say, even though there's the specialists, the offensive players, defense, it's still a very fast game. Like, with the 8-second rule in the NLL, like, there's no slow changes. You better get up the floor quick. I like that. But I would have no problem if a coach came in and said, "I'm running 3 lines both ways, and we're going to blow the socks off the opposition." If they could do that, everybody else would be following. If they won championships with that, they'd be doing it. So, it's been a long time now. Like, it's been 20 years of these specialists, and I don't see it changing soon. And I don't believe in mandating the change. Some old timers have said, like, we should change the rules so you can't, so you have to go both ways. I don't believe in mandating that. I think, you coach within the rules, and if you can make it work better. The one thing I will say, though, is that the defenders are great now. The offense is great. Like, when I was mentioning when the Gates first came, there were guys on the team. You can always find weak spots on the team. Like when guys are going both ways, you can easily find a few guys that couldn't check their hats.
Sure.
Right? And you get a guy as talented as Gary or Paul Cake, and it really did look like they were running against 12-year-olds when there was a mismatch. It was just, oh my God, that's too easy. And maybe some people like it because it would be higher scoring, but I like lacrosse when you have to earn everything you get. So I do like when there's great defense, there's great offense, not just tons and tons of mistakes.
Yeah. That's why house leagues are important.
Yeah, and I do agree. Like if anyone tried to say, let's start the specialists, at a young age, no, let them develop and let them learn the game all over the place. And there are guys in the NLL who played defense that were offensive stars in their teams their whole. I think that's an extra skill they bring when they can play defense. Like a guy like Brandon Slade on the Toronto Rock, like, he set records in Brock University for scoring. Yet he plays defense on the Toronto Rock. But you notice that when he runs up the floor, he makes nice plays. When he gets an opportunity, he can put it in the net. And there's probably hundreds of guys in the NLL that are playing defense but have some pretty decent skills around the net.
Yeah, Phil Caputo comes to mind actually with that too. Playing defense. Yeah.
It helps to understand defense by playing offense.
He's skilled. I remember same age as my eldest son. I remember him from the time he was tight, and he was like a superstar on his team.
Absolutely. Now, you move in. Of course, we talked about you moving up into the broadcast booth, but you're also writing columns at that time for the Toronto Sun. How did that start?
I'm trying to even remember how that started. It's funny because back then I would do anything to promote lacrosse. And I think I might have written a few odd articles, and it was just like, I remember being in One Man Cup once when one of my, Ron McDougall, I don't know if you know.
Yes.
I don't know. The late Ron McDougall, he used to work for the Sun. He used to do this sports cartoon.
Yep.
And I remember one of the Man Cups, he said, we were always begging for coverage. He says, "Shanny, the Sun will put an article in every game if you write it." All right, so I was writing it as if I was just a reporter. It wasn't like written by Brian Shannon. It was just what happened in the game and all that. So I started writing a few things just so we could get some coverage in the major newspapers.
Sure.
And then, somewhere along the line, I think they were doing some sort of a community thing or whatever, and somebody from the Sun just called and said, "Do you want to do it? Because you've written a few things and blah blah blah." So yeah, I did do that for a while, and I enjoyed it. And the other thing that I did, I used to work near Yonge and Eglinton, which was where the fan sports station was, and
on Holly Street, yeah.
Yeah, on Holly Street, that's right. And because I was so close to them, they'd call me up, like, I think whenever they just had, like, who are you going to put on? They'd call me up and say, "Hey, Shanny, can you come over and talk about lacrosse?" And I'd never say no. Like, if I'm in the broadcast business, if somebody asked me to do something, I never say no. And so I would go on, and I'd always promote lacrosse. I was still playing, and in the senior leagues, and I would broadcast. I would talk about what's going on in the standings or the Man Cup or the playoffs or whatever. Anything to promote the game. And it's funny because that is probably the reason why I did get the broadcasting job with the Rock, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years later. Because when I called them and said, "Do you have a color guy?" they knew who I was, just because I had been on the Fan so many times, and even Landsberg. Remember Landsberg had that TV
Michael,
yeah,
off the record.
Yep.
I think his first year I was on 15 times. I was the C-list, D-list guy that when we need a fourth guy, they would call me. So I would go on that all the time too, and whatever it is, I was the lacrosse guy.
It's a small world. I knew Landsberg when he was still going to college, and he was working at Creed's. my mom was working there, so yeah, we worked together way before that.
So we had a good run on that show. It was a fun show.
That was a great show. That was a terrific show.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about mainstream TV and things like that, and we were finally back to that, but we had all that before. I remember Jim Wasson was on the show going, all the stuff that we're vying for now, we had that in the 70s. We had the big arenas. We had the main arenas. They had all the things. They had the games, 40 games a year. They had the money for the era. And then of course, in the 90s with the Mill League, they had ESPN2 and all the rest of that going on. Now we're finally back, and probably the heyday in Toronto was when it was on, whether it was a Score or Sportsnet or whichever, and Joe Bowen doing the plays. And at that time, you were getting 16,000, 17,000 people a game because people knew of it. And then all of a sudden, it all disappeared. And now we're coming back finally with TSN and ESPN.
Yeah, well, it was like, before this latest deal with TSN, we went 4 or 5 years without TV, and I'll tell you, I had arguments with the NLL. I said, I don't know about the States, but in Canada, you need to be on TSN or Sportsnet. Because if you're not, it's like you're not real. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, sure, the online, whether it's BR Live or YouTube or whatever, we'll watch it. Like, the diehards will watch it. But my mother won't watch it, even though she's a lacrosse fan. My brothers won't watch. Like, you're not, the casual fans are not going to go out of their way to watch it. And that is why lacrosse blew up in Ontario in 99, because the Toronto Rock was on Sportsnet at the time. And Joe Bowen, who everybody loved and trusted because he was a Toronto Maple Leaf play-by-play guy, was calling the game, saying what a great game this is. And it was, those 16,000 fans were not lacrosse fans. There might have been 4,000 that were lacrosse people, but the other 12,000 were just like, I saw it on TV. This game is great. I love it. And it's crazy not to be on, like in Canada. Like I said, there's so many different stations in the States. I can't pretend that I know what the market's like. But if you're in Canada, you better be on TSN or Sportsnet so that the casual fans can flip the channel and see what a great game it is. And
the CFL is a good example of that. What happens when TSN gets a hold of it?
The CFL was almost dead in the water until TSN got involved in that. And even just what TSN did with the World Junior Tournament. My brother played the World Junior Tournament when there was one media guy from Canada would go to cover it. And I mean, and that's become such a big event. And, you know, and I think TSN probably does the best job of, you know, when they take on something and get committed to it, they promote it, and yeah, it's finally it's on. I think it also helps that we have a bunch of Canadian teams too, because it, you know, we can make it like, you know, lacrosse night in Canada, and it's got to be. And you know, the old commissioner in the NLL, you know, Nick, I wasn't sure if he really believed what he was saying, but Nick, you know, he'd roll his eyes when we talk about, you know, get it on TSN, because it was all about, you know, digital, you know, and I don't know if we truly believe that. I did speak. It's funny too, because I spoke to, I forget his name, but he used to be a big shot for TSN. Now he's working in Europe, and I ran him once, and he said to me, he goes, you know, because he's been living in Europe for 5-6 years. He goes, what's going on with the NLL? Is it on TSN? And I go, no, they're more interested in the digital internet stuff. And he says, well, that sounds like something somebody would say who couldn't get a TV deal. So I wonder, although they might have sold it, this is what we want, digital, because everybody's using their phone. I don't know, the kids are using their phones maybe, but maybe it was just they couldn't get the TV deal they wanted, and they were playing it up. But now, yeah, I love where it's going right now.
Let me add
more TV.
Let me add something to what you're saying about TSN. It didn't hurt the Rock that they're playing at Maple Leaf Gardens, a place that not many people could afford to go to watch something. You know, that didn't hurt either when it first started.
No, you're right. And you know what's funny too? That first year, they were selling way more beer than they ever did for Leaf games. They ran out of. They couldn't believe what, you know, the beer sales, and because it was a walk up crowd, and it was fantastic. Even me as a broadcast, the way, like, I remember going to my first Leaf game as a kid at Maple Leaf Gardens and holding those tickets in my hand on the subway and checking every minute to make sure I hadn't lost them. And then I'm, you know, as an adult doing the broadcast, just walking around Maple Leaf Gardens without people stopping me. I was like, I can't believe, like, I'm going up to the booth. I'm doing it. Like, it was such a great feeling. And I think, yeah, everybody loved it. And even now, I get chills when I watch that last game at Maple Leaf Gardens when Caleb Toth scored the winning goal, and that place was, like, rocking. And what a way to close the Gardens. That was great.
I can attest to that feeling. I did the Junior A hockey game, the Marlies game with Michael Landsberg. And I also, so I know exactly how you feel when you go up into the gondola where Foster Hewitt was. You know, it was like, if you're a sports fan, God forbid you're a hockey fan. I mean, you go up there, and no offense, we're talking lacrosse right now, but you know, it was a place where you really had to be special to just go into the building. And by special, I mean, you had to have some money. I mean, the gray tickets sold like crazy because they were the least expensive and they were the most rowdy people. Rowdy, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way. The excitement of walking into Maple Leaf Gardens is not lost on anyone. Wasn't people our age can explain that. Maybe people don't understand it now. But it was awesome. And then to go see lacrosse there was just new game, old venue, amazing.
Oh, yeah. It was almost a religious experience. It just felt great to be walking into the Gardens, you know, every week to do a game. I absolutely loved it.
Now, before we go, because we're rapidly running out of time, I want to bring up your kids, because all of them played. Well, Seamus played Mimico. Well, Devlin, obviously, he just won an NLL championship with the Buffalo Bandits, also a Mimico prospect. But your daughter, Brenna, is actually going into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, joining you, because she's going in with the under-19s from 2015, that championship team. And she had a heck of a career between Guelph, Louisville.
No, we're very proud of, I'm very proud of all of them. You know, they all played lacrosse. I'm very happy that my kids just love lacrosse as much as I did and as much as I do. Like, they're all still playing now. But, so you know, the team that is being inducted in the Hall of Fame is her U19 field team, Team Canada. It was in 2015. They went to Edinburgh, Scotland, and huge underdogs to the U.S. team, and I think they got their butts kicked pretty well the U.S. It might have been like 16-9 or something like that. But and they just got better as the tournament went on. Even against England and Australia in the round robin, they barely squeaked by. But once it got to the playoffs, they kicked butt against Australia, and then that final game against the U.S. was a 9-8 victory. Was just so exciting, and I was so happy to be there. I wasn't even planning on going. It's funny because like the last one I said, I gotta go. Something special might happen, and I was correct, and it was great. So that whole team is being inducted into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame this November, I believe. And I don't know if they just started the inductions actually in Ontario, because it used to always be in BC, because that's where the Canadian Hall of Fame is. So yeah, we're all very excited. And the funny thing is, whenever the inductions come out, I read the induction. And I just sort of, like, I saw Troy Cording, I thought, that's great. An old teammate of mine, and a few names I recognize. I didn't even go down to the bottom of the list where it talked about the team. It wasn't until the next day somebody said, "Oh, congratulations." I go, "Oh, on what?" And I realized 13 was being inducted. So that was a lot of, we're very proud of that. And, I'm looking forward to the ceremony where they go in.
Sure, but that team, actually, the way you describe it, and getting blown out in the round robin and getting better, and then of course the heart-stopping fun. It brings me back to the '78 Canada team that was out in England, right?
I mean that's a classic story too, and obviously they're in the Hall of Fame, without a doubt. But yeah, very similar story, because that U.S. women's team, the U19 women's team, had never lost a game. And that was part of the fun too, just seeing the shock of the U.S. They just expect to win. And one of the funny things about that is you could look it up on YouTube. The U.S. did a documentary on their team. Like they did a video of the final game, but it obviously didn't turn out the way they want. But whenever I want to see the highlights, I click that on and watch it. But it was, it just didn't go the way the U.S. was expecting. But it provided a nice YouTube link for me whenever I want to check the highlights.
Definitely. Now, going into the NLL here just quickly, does Devlin get the starting job, you think, with Buffalo? Is Matt going to retire? What do you think?
You know what? I've got no inside knowledge there. I think if Matt Vince decide to play again, there'd be, how many teams have got the NLL now? What, 16?
15, yeah.
Every team would want that guy. It doesn't matter his age. He's still the best or one of the top three in the NLL. Now, if you want to leave while you're on top, then he might do the same thing that Bob Watson did. But whatever Matt Vince decides to do, like, total props to that future Hall of Fame. I mean, it's unbelievable the career he has had. But I think like I said, I don't know. But I remember when Bob Watson, the year before he won, they lost in the finals, and I remember how down he was. And the next year he won in the finals. And in our minds back then, there was no doubt that he was going to go. He probably told people beforehand, I win and I'm going. So who knows? But it would be a fine way to end his career if he decides that, but I'll respect him for whatever he does.
Sure. What a way to go out, too, with a 13-4 win, setting a record for the least amount of goals. Yeah, there's a number of levels to that by getting out at that. So who knows? Yeah. But, Devlin looked great in the games he got in. So let's see.
How about that? Sooner or later, his time will come.
Absolutely. Any surprises that you've seen so far? I know we just got into the free agent signings and some of the trades. Is there anything that's kind of like, that Spocky and eyebrow going, wow, that happened?
I guess I don't know if it's a surprise, but I like what Derek Keenan's doing in Saskatoon. I like that he sort of let some of his great veterans go. He's loading up for the future, and I think he knows what he's doing. He's a not just a great coach. I think he's got a keen eye for management, for scouting, and I think it might not be this year, but I think pretty soon you're going to see Saskatoon or Saskatchewan rush being another a great team again. So yeah, those are the ones that I was excited about. I'm excited that Mark Matthews is coming to the Rock as well. But
he might be a magnet for a couple other guys coming. Rubish, Buchanan, they might wind up over here too. So
that's true too. I mean, they had a great year last year. I thought I didn't like the way it ended. I think part of that was just tough that Tom Schreiber got hurt at the wrong time, but they still still have a great team.
Absolutely. We're into that time now also with OGLL, with everything's going into the playoffs, MSL, WLA. A great time to be around. President's Cup. The President's Cup coming into that one, you have Oakville, who has put together this incredible all-star team to try and win it, of course, up in track. What do you think about the Senior B?
I'm actually very excited about that, and I don't want to break any news, but you might see a few of us that involved in the broadcast of those games.
Awesome.
But I'm really excited about the Senior B Championship coming to Oakville, and I mean, that is a great tournament. I did play in one President's Cup in my career, and it's a tough tournament. Like the Man Cup is tough, 4 out of 7, usually in 10 days. But the President's Cup, sometimes you're playing 2 games in one day, and there's just so many teams, and they got to narrow it down. And I'll tell you, the one year I did go to the President's Cup, it was with Owen Sound, and we were a beat-up bunch by the time we got there, and by the time it was over, it was tough walking out of there. It is a tough tournament. It is so tough to be the last team standing in that, and I think it's going to be really exciting, the fact that it's so close to home.
Well, I really want to thank you, Brian. I know you took time out of your day to join us with it, and it's always a pleasure to talk lacrosse, especially with you.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed talking with both of you guys, and great show. I appreciate it. A lot of fun.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my friends at Rogers when we did our Rogers broadcast of lacrosse, of Beaches Lacrosse. It was a pleasure to do it before there was a TSN and a Sportsnet. We were broadcasting games, and it made me very proud to be on the leading edge of that, of showing people what lacrosse looked like. And my introduction to it was that. I never had a stick, didn't know anything about lacrosse. But I got to tell you, when I first saw it, I was amazed at how attractive a game it was, and how intense the players were. And I felt like a fool that I didn't even realize it. So thank you for what you've done. You've helped to elevate the game, and that's something that can't be sneezed at. So I appreciate you being here as well. I appreciate everything you do about lacrosse, and thanks for coming on. And hopefully we can have you come on again in a short time and continue this conversation, because I could tell Gary's not done yet.
there's lots more to chat about.
No. You know what? I've done games with many play-by-play guys who are doing lacrosse for the first time, and I get a sense of pride when you guys realize what a great game it is. Between Joe Bowen, Doc Emmerich, lots of guys and to see guys like you guys that have called many sports to come watch the lacrosse game saying, I didn't know how great this game was. That makes me feel proud.
And you should be. Great game. Pick up a stick anytime, folks. You'll enjoy the game. It is one that also we heard today that if you're in somewhere in Ontario, in a small community, they'll pay for you to play. That's something that is awesome to know. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. For Gary Groob and, of course, Brian Shanahan, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk. Seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. This week, a special Friday version. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For lacrosse talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it here, read it, download it, and don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. See you next Thursday.